That was a nice move by Pipkins, taking it right to the rack himself. Wide open three, left wing, and it's good. Nylon, the dunk likes that, Matt.
A three from the right side, and it's good! The one, Pipkins, the man, yet again.
Hello and welcome to The Flex. I'm Matt St. Jean alongside Joe Howie as always, and new to the show is Peter DiBiasi. Peter, you did some broadcasting with us back on WDOM. You've got your own show, your own podcast, the Talking Sports Podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. Ready to talk some Friars basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you're excited to talk Friars basketball because at this point in the season, seems like there are few who are excited to talk about it. Friars on a 3-game losing streak, but hoping to break it on Wednesday afternoon. It's the 4 p.m. game. Friars taking on UConn. This is going to be quite the battle. Peter, you're new to the show, so I'll let you start off. What are your initial thoughts on this one?
Yeah, you're right, Matt. Providence as a whole has been struggling, like you said, three losses in a row, especially 9 and 10 overall. And I read, I believe, a couple days ago that this is the first time we're under 500 in the month of February since 2005, 2006. So
Mhm.
it's been a while. It's a long time ago. But yeah, I think I've talked about before to some people. The biggest problem with Providence right now is not having that third scorer and defense, and not having that third scorer outside of Nate Watson and David Duke is kind of troublesome because you have those games like with David Duke last game, not scoring great in the last couple games. He hasn't scored great, so you kind of need another scorer to kind of help the load with Nate Watson, and that hasn't been really there. With either Reeves, Horkler, Jimmy Nichols is out, or even Greg Gann or Allen Breed. So they kind of need more of a consistent score. And then not the defense this year is one of the worst Ed Cooley defenses I have seen in a long time. And we know how Providence likes to play grit and just play defense and fight you to the end, keep you in the 60s. But a lot of Providence games have been up to the 80s and 90s, and just is not how we want to win games and how we can win games.
Yeah, I think you basically just summed up the last 2 months of podcasts for us. Joe, what do you have to add?
Yeah, that was a great summary of, and in a much nicer way than I would have said it, of the past month and a half of Friar basketball. I mean, really, it's do or die time. This is the first of our final 6 scheduled games. The reason I say that is because the Georgetown game at in Providence at home is still up in the air. It's not looking like that will be rescheduled. So as of right now, we have 6 official scheduled games. This is it. This is the do or die time. Last season, we had 6 games left. We were 500 in conference play, and look what happened. 2 years before, or excuse me, 3 years before that, 2016, 2017, 4 games under 500 in conference play, won 6 straight to go 10-8 for third in the league. So it's do or die time. If this team has any heart, any grit, any defensive sense of urgency, it's got to come out now.
Yeah,
And that's the bottom line.
yeah.
The margin for error is gone.
Yeah. There's if the Friars lose really any game left in the regular season, their only hope of making the NCAA tournament will be going through Madison Square Garden and trying to win the Big East tournament, which on the Ed Cooley radio show today, they did talk about how it is expected to be at Madison Square Garden. There's going to be a meeting it's Tuesday. We're recording this on Monday, so there'll be a meeting on Tuesday to kind of formally finalize those plans to have the tournament there. So the Friars will get there, but we'll have to see what the road has in store between now and then. Providence is looking for its first win against UConn since back in 2012, a 72-70 win over the Huskies. This is one of those long storied rivalries. I know Friar fans hate UConn. As tough of a matchup as this is, I have to say I'm a little bit excited to have UConn back in the conference just to get the energy that some of these games bring out.
No, you're right.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
even. Sorry, Peter, go ahead.
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, I think UConn being a storied program with so many championships in the Big East championships, national championship, it's just great to have them back, and it just makes the conference, which is already a great conference before UConn, into one of the premier conferences in college basketball. So yeah, just having UConn back has been great, and I know I'm always excited to play UConn. Haven't played UConn in a couple years, even more than a couple years, so I'm excited to play UConn, and I always like to beat UConn. Not a huge fan of UConn. I don't have hatred as much as some other people do. But I've never been a huge fan of UConn, so I'm excited to play UConn, and having them back in the Big East feels like the old days when I was much younger. But it's cool to have them back.
Yeah, it's here's the thing. As cool and as um reminiscent as it is to have UConn back in the conference, during the summer and during the early fall, I was so against the narrative that Dan Hurley was the Dave Gavitt Messiah, risen from the dead, leading UConn to the Big East championship and bringing the Big East back to stardom. And a lot of that narrative came from ESPN because they loved UConn until Fox took over the Big East, and everyone knows that storyline. But I hated that narrative, and especially because we know Dan Hurley. Dan Hurley's a gritty coach, and that's not to take anything away from him. But what national success has he had? How many Final Fours does Dan Hurley have that he's going to take UConn to? You know what I mean? And that's a
Yeah.
lot coming from a Providence fan, but like, slow your roll. Let UConn settle back into the conference first before you start making these huge accusations that they're going to bring the Big East back to national relevancy. We have two national championships in the past 5 years. Take a seat.
Yeah. And I think UConn has been good for the conference. They're certainly one of the better teams in the Big East this season, but it's not like they're saving the conference like some people have made it out to be.
Joe Lunardi.
But let's talk about this matchup. For me, I think there's a couple intriguing storylines here. I'm going to start with what I think is probably the most pressing concern for the Friars. We've been talking all season long about how rough rebounding has been in Providence. Friars have gotten better at it, but especially the defensive end of the floor, the rebounding has not been what it needs to be. The other end, UConn is fifth in the nation in offensive rebounding percentage. This is a team that likes to crash the glass. And they got Tyrese Martin, who Friars fans might be familiar with. He played at URI. He's averaging 7.1 rebounds per game. They got Isaiah Whaley, 6'9". He's got 6.2 rebounds per game. They got Sinogo, 3.6. They got Josh Carlton, 4.4. And UConn has a whole bunch of these big 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", and taller guys who can score and crash the glass. Joe, I'll start with you. What do the Friars do to combat that?
Bring it. I mean, at this point, I can pull a ton of statistics out. I can search through the archives. Really, what we need to do is bring it. And the example I want to bring up here is last season, it was the first of the final 6 games. Luwan Pipkins re-enters the starting lineup, and defensively, he brings it, along with Malik White and Khalif Young. Now, the similarity between Luwan Pipkins, Malik White, and Khalif Young, or, yeah, the three of them, they all were starters at one point and lost their starting spot. So they all had to go through adversity to earn their way back into the starting lineup. And the reason I say that is because when you talk about rebounding, and rebounding is essentially a form of paint defense,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're defending the rim on one end on defensively, or you're defending your offensive possession by getting a rebound for a second chance point, right? So in terms of rebounding, that's something you got to be tough to do. If you're 6'8" and above and you're in the paint and you have the wingspan of some of our wings, you have to be tough. So when you look at Luwan, Malik, and Khalif, those guys all lost their starting spots at some point respectively last season, and they had to be tough to earn it back. Luwan Pipkins, the big problem with him is that he wasn't defending in the backcourt. He was just taking terrible shots and lollygagging back on defense. He got benched. What happened? What changed in the 6 games that he was benched for? He learned what he had to do. That's tough. Being able to rebuild and do that is tough. I think this team lacks a sense of toughness, and given this isn't everyone, because I think Nate Watson's very tough. I think David Duke has shown signs of toughness, but I think this team overall needs to learn how to be tough. If you want to out-rebound the best rebounding team that we're going to play this year, you got to be tough.
Peter, you think they have it in them? Think they can out-tough UConn?
I think it's gonna be tough, and I told we used the word tough about 100 times, but Joe, I think you hit it right on the head. Like you can look at all the stats, you can look at the rebounding percentage, how many average rebounds per game. But you're right, Ed Cooley has called this team multiple times soft, and I
Yep.
feel like this team just doesn't have those couple of guys that we've had in the past that just play tough defense. I know, like you said, Nate Watson's a tough guy. David Duke been great on defense throughout their careers, but there's not a lot after them. You miss like the Alpha Diallos, the Malik White, the Chris Dunns on defense, the LaDante Hentons, like the guys that play legit defense and that pride themselves on the defense. And I don't think anybody on this team really was like, you know what, I want to play defense. Like they don't really pride themselves on defense. And I feel like I've seen multiple times. And when I was doing the broadcasting the game, and I looked into detail watching the game, and we got beat multiple times on the back end and just keep getting beat behind. That's just a lack of defense and effort. When you get beat behind, it's just you're not focusing, you're not in your spot, you're not doing this or that. I feel like this team just doesn't want to play defense. And Cooley calling them soft, I get what he's doing. I know he doesn't really think they're soft as like basketball players because they're all tough basketball players in the sense, but he's trying to light a fire under them. He's trying to like, guys, it's do or die time. You're going to have to play defense in the league. Our scoring is not the problem. If we're going to score 70, 75 points a game, we should be able to win most games. The problem is we're giving up in the 80s. And yeah, they just don't have the guys that have played defense in the past. Like you said, the Juan Pipkins came back from being benched and played defense. We knew he can score. We always knew he can score, but then the defense led to the offense, and he just created a whole new team. I feel like we don't have that.
Yeah.
And I just feel like we don't have that true defender. I know David Duke's a good defender, but we don't have 3 or 4 guys that are just going to go play defense, going to get in your face, that are going to make it a nightmare game for you. And we just don't have those type of guys on this team right now.
Yeah, certainly they don't have guys playing like that. Having Jimmy Nichols out certainly hurts that as well because he's another body down low. Now you got to rely a lot more on Greg Gant and Noah Horkler to step up. This is a defense that's 224th in the nation in points allowed per game. There's nothing special there. That's not what you usually see in an Ed Cooley defense. They're 7th in the conference. Again, this is not what you typically see from Ed Cooley. But you did touch on a little bit there, Peter. You touched on lighting a fire under them. I think that's what Ed Cooley's trying to do. And specifically, I think there's one player that's going to be the key to success for the Friars going forward who really needs to light that fire under himself again. It's David Duke. He's had, I think, 3 games in a row now struggling. Do you think he can turn it on? Do you think he can get this offense going and turn it on the defensive end too to get the Friars back to where they need to be?
Yeah, Matt. I think he's gonna have to. Like, I feel like we've seen glimpses of, I think even more than glimpses of David Duke, because there was a stretch when he looked like one of the best point guards in the Big East, and he arguably still is because he's a great point guard and a great guard in general. But yeah, you're right. Like I said earlier in the show, like they don't have enough scores around just him and Nate Watson. So I know we need him to step up, and we're gonna need him to score 15, 20 points a game, be efficient, play defense, get steals. Like he's the X factor of this team. I know usually your best player, like there's usually a guy that's not usually the X factor, but David Duke's gonna need to step up and score and be efficient, not take fadeaways, not take a ton of threes. I think when he's been at his best is when he gets to the hole in the beginning of the game, gets fouled, makes layups, shows the defense that he can get to the hole. Then they're gonna have to play a little bit defense, and then he'll be able to make outside shots. And he just needs to get in a rhythm. I feel like in the last couple of games he's just started slow, and that has continued throughout the whole game. I think Danny Manning said against in their last game that like he just wasn't able to see the ball go in the basket. He needed to see the ball be able to go in the basket, and it wasn't happening consistently. So David Duke's going to need to be able to step up, get to the hole, draw some fouls, get some easy points, and then that will create open shots on the outside.
I mean, that sounds like a plan to me. You think he can do that, Joe?
Yeah, I think he can. This might be a hot take, but he didn't have a terrible game against St. John's. I think the dip in scoring we're seeing is a complete result of him playing on the ball and playing that true point guard position a little more than I think him, Ed Cooley, everyone, a little more than anyone would like to see. The loss of Jared Bynum is really starting to ring right now. That's not the only reason why we're suffering offensively, but it is definitely not helping. Listen, Allen Breed's a great guard. He's a great point guard, but he is not a traditional table-setting point guard like Jared Bynum. Allen Breed is more of a Lawan Pipkins or Malik White scoring point guard. So I think when you have him on the floor, Allen Breed, you kind of want the ball in the hands of a more experienced guard such as David Duke. So having him handle the ball has definitely led to a decrease in scoring. Kevin McNamara asked Ed Cooley about it in the post-game presser, and he basically proved this point true. He said, we're trying to get David looks off the ball, but it's very difficult to take him off the ball, because if you want to let Alan Breed run it the whole game, that's fine. It's just he hasn't been in the program for as long as David Duke has. You can't let Bryson Goodine do it because he's a combo guard and he's barely been in the program at all. So you need David Duke to run the point. You just need to figure out how to manage him running the point and him scoring. Last game, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. That's pretty good. For a guard, 6 rebounds, 2 less than your starting center and starting power forward. I'd say that's pretty good. 7 assists is not bad either.
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty good game there. It's just like you said, Peter, he has not seen the ball go through the basket, and getting a little bit of help at point guard could certainly help ease the load on him. There really have not been any updates on Jared Bynum. We've been on Jared Bynum watch for over a month now, and no idea what's going on there for the Friars with their injured point guard. But if you take a look over what's going on in stores, James Bouknight for UConn is a game time decision. That's according to Danny Hurley. And this is a guy who put up 40 points against Creighton. He's averaged over 20 points a game this season when healthy. He hasn't played in quite a long time. Joe, how big of an impact could he make for UConn, and do the Friars have a chance at defending him?
This is a loaded question. It doesn't seem like it, but personally, as someone who has had 4 separate surgeries, I don't know if taking 3.5 weeks to get back onto the court is the best idea, especially when you're talking about an elbow surgery. That's not like, that's a joint. That is something that is going to be moving every second you are on the basketball court. So even if the dissolvable stitches were gone in a week and a half, you have to let whatever was fixed on that joint heal. And it doesn't happen in 3.5 weeks. I'll tell you that much. I'm no doctor, I'm no surgeon, but just from common sense and from experience with surgeries, the insides don't heal for at least a month and a half. So for him to rush back, listen, if they want his scoring punch and they want his leadership, then by all means do it. But he's going to be very uncomfortable with that elbow. Unless it was the smallest of surgeries, I can't imagine that's going to be comfortable for him.
So you're skeptical of the impact he'll have on the game. Peter, what do you think?
Well, I agree with Joe. Rushing back from surgery is risky, and there could be lingering effects. We don't know if he's 100%. I'm assuming he's not going to be a total 100%. But look, James Bouknight is a potential lottery pick. So anytime you have a chance to have a potential lottery pick on the court at a time against a bunch of players that are most likely not going to be lottery picks on the other side, it's tough for the Friars. And I think James Bouknight's one of the best guards in the country. He's 6'5". He can score, he can pass, he can even rebound. He's averaging 5 rebounds a game, and he's scoring at a high level when he's playing. So if he's 100%, and I'm not saying he's going to be, because I don't know if he's going to be 100%, but if he's 90, 95%, 75, 80%, if he's somewhere up there in the percentage-wise, he's going to be great, and I think he's one of the best guards in the country, and I think UConn, having him back, could kind of give him like a jolt, kind of even in the scoring or the defense, just kind of energy on the team. Like, you know what, guys, we got Bouknight back, we got our best player back, we got our leader back. Let's get a little energy here, and it will help them in the long run. He could be not even a kind of a decoy. They don't really use decoys in basketball as much as like other sports, but I feel like obviously the Friars, if Bouknight's playing, going to put a lot of focus on him because he's their best scorer by far. But other guys will be able to get other looks like R.J. Cole, Tyrese Martin, and a couple other guys. So I think Bouknight, just his impact on the floor will give UConn energy. And if he's 100%, man, Friars better have a plan how to stop him.
Yeah,
Peter.
Go ahead, Joe.
I agree, actually. I think that's a great point you brought about him being a decoy. The game I want to bring up for Friars fans is 2017-2018 season at home against Brown. That was in the midst of the Kyron Cartwright ankle injury, and you had Mekhi Ashton Langford and Malik White juggling the point. Malik White goes down with an ankle injury that game. The Friars are down by 11, 12 points to Brown with about 7 minutes left in the second half. Cartwright hasn't played 1 second of basketball. He goes in immediately. Brown's defense is double teaming him and swarming him, and Alpha Diallo and Rodney Bullock are getting wide open looks in the paint. Wide open looks, because Brown was so nervous about Kyron Cartwright, that billboard player. Now, obviously, he's not a lottery pick like James Bouknight, but when your star player comes back off an injury, opposing defenses definitely take notice. So I think that's a great point. Even if he's not 100%, he will have an impact if he's on the floor. If he is 100%, then there's no reason why you shouldn't play him. I just think it's very doubtful that 3.5 weeks after a surgery, he would be at 100%.
Yeah, and I think, and this is, I mean, he's a game time decision. So we'll see if Bouknight even ends up going in this one. Quite frankly, I don't think UConn needs him to be able to beat the Friars. I think this is going to be an uphill battle. I think it might be time to make our predictions on how this one turns out. Peter, you're the guest on the show, so I'll let you start out. How do you think this game plays out? What do you think the final score is? And who's the X factor? If the Friars can come away with a win, who's the X factor?
Yeah, Matt, this is going to be a tough game. Looking at both teams' record, obviously UConn had a much better year. They're much better scoring offense, better defensive team. They kind of win in a lot of the categories. It's also, you have to take into effect, this game's going to be at 4 o'clock. So it's kind of a weird start time on a Wednesday. Most games don't start till 6, 7, 8, or 9 o'clock on Wednesdays. And I think the X factor, if the Friars want to win this game, is going to be A.J. Reeves. And I feel like I've said this so many times, why A.J. Reeves has to be an X factor. Look, UConn's going to put a lot of focus on Nate Watson and David Duke. They know David Duke and Nate Watson are their 2 best scorers on this team. I think, but A.J. Reeves is going to have to score. He's going to have to be able to make shots. He's also going to have to dribble and get to the lane and just be able to play defense and make shots. If he can have about 15 to 17 points per game in this game, and David Duke and Nate Watson have around that same, I think the Friars are going to win. So I think A.J. Reeves is going to be the X factor. My prediction for the game, look, I've kind of gone back and forth with this kind of in this show when we've been recording it, who's going to win the game. Look, I'm going to take the Friars in this one. This might be on a little out on a limb here, but I think this is the time where you're going to have to win the game. You're going to have to start winning games if you have any chance to make the NCAA tournament, or just build confidence into the Big East tournament if you need 1 or 2 wins in the Big East tournament, which is always possible. You always can win a couple games towards the end and then need about 2 or 3 wins in the Big East tournament to make the tournament. So that's possible. I think the Friars need this win, and this is probably do or die. So I got the Friars 78, UConn 73. So I got the Friars winning by 5.
All right, I like the optimism. We need a little bit of that in Friartown right now. Now, I say that, I already know how you feel, Joe.
I'll start with my X factor. Peter, you actually took the words right out of my mouth. I'm going with A.J. Reeves as well. Watson's coming off of a 30-point performance. It was his best offensive performance we've ever seen him play at Friartown. I still think he's going to play well, but I do think that UConn is going to double team him. Listen, Dan Hurley's a gritty coach. He knows how we like to play through Nate Watson. He has been on the opposing side of us playing through Nate Watson at URI when he coached there. So he knows what you're going to get with Nate Watson. I would not be surprised if Nate Watson is double teamed this game. I still think he'll put up double digits, but it won't be as dominant of a performance as it was against St. John's. With that said, if he's being double teamed, that means someone's going to be open. I think it's going to be A.J. Reeves. Listen, if Duke isn't scoring, and when I say scoring, I mean mid-range three-pointers. If Duke isn't scoring the ball outside of the paint, you need someone else to do it. Last game, Noah Horkler was able to step up. Reeves was able to step up a little bit. Reeves has been playing uphill. He's been scoring in double figures as of late. I think if you can get Reeves to play the 2 instead of the wing small forward, if you can get him to play the 2, he's also going to provide you some help in the backcourt. I said this to Matt when we were on the phone the other night, is that I hate that during some of our inbounds plays, we will have Noah Horkler and Greg Gant bring the ball up. There are forwards. There are wing forwards. They play the 4. They're not the ball handlers, and they're not very quick. They shouldn't be bringing the ball up. So if UConn is pressing us, which I'm sure they're going to, just because Dan Hurley's going to throw everything in the kitchen sink at us, I'll rephrase. When UConn presses us and David Duke is being doubled, give it to Reeves. Reeves has played the 2. He's played the 1 in high school. He can ball handle, 20 feet up the court. Give it to him. Let him bring it up. Not one of our forwards who's going to get stripped. So I think you're right. A.J. Reeves is going to be the X factor. If the Friars want to win, they got to play through him. So this is a milestone for me on the show. This is the first time I'm gonna pick against the Friars. Listen, I can talk all I want about momentum and toughness. It's not something we've seen as of late on this Friars squad. Sure, they've had some gritty wins against Marquette, at Creighton, at Seton Hall, but we haven't seen the toughness that's going to get you into the NCAA tournament. I think UConn takes it, and I think they take it handily, 88-75 Connecticut.
Yeah, I mean, that's not an optimistic take right there, Joe, but I think I'm right there with you. I am going to go in a different direction with my X Factor. I don't think this is one you guys are going to see coming. I'm going to go with Greg Gant. And he's not going to start. But the Friars need somebody to step up rebounding who can go against some of these guys for UConn. Greg Gant has the size, and he has the athletic tools to do it. We just haven't seen him put it all together yet. If he's able to put it together, he can be a great asset on defense for the Friars. Now, you're going against the UConn team with James Bouknight. According to 24/7, James Bouknight was one spot ahead of Greg Gant in the recruiting rankings. And you have to know Gant knows that. He's going to come out with an edge. I think he could come out with some fire. If he's able to contribute, get some rebounds, score a little bit, and really show up on the defensive end of the floor and use that athleticism, that could turn the game for the Friars. Now, with that said, I don't necessarily expect that to happen. I don't know if we've seen enough from Greg Gant to really think that that will happen, at least not this season. If it does, I think the Friars have a good chance of winning this game. I think this is an area where you guys are spot on with Reeves, too. I think Reeves could absolutely factor into this. I'm still going to pick UConn. I'm going to go lower scoring. I think it's probably going to be 71-61 UConn, something like that. This is a UConn defense that has been underrated and has been good all season long. The Friars have struggled to score at points. They scored against St. John's, but really struggled to score against Seton Hall. I think you're going to see a UConn offense that's able to get second chances basically at will, and that's probably going to drain on the Friars. And I have a feeling we're going to be talking come Wednesday night a little bit about next season and a little bit about Big East tournament hopes, because that's where this Friars team is going to be at, unfortunately. I hope I'm wrong. Please, I hope there's people on Twitter calling me out saying I was wrong after this one. I think we're going to see a UConn win. Peter, you're the guest. I'll let you kind of get a last word if there was anything else you wanted to say, and then you can tell the people where they can find you, where they can follow you, where they can listen to you.
Yeah. One last thing I want to say. I know I didn't say them as my X factor. I'm personally as X factor, but Alan Breed. Because if Jared Bynum does not play, like Joe, you said, AJ Reeves needs to be another ball handler. Alan Breed needs to be another ball handler. Because I think David Duke being on the ball the whole time has really hurt his offensive game, like you guys said earlier. And I think we need another guard. So if Jared Bynum plays in this game, which I have no idea if he's going to be, no idea. Nobody has any idea. It's like the biggest mystery in the world right now that Jared Bynum is never going to play. But if he does play, that's a different factor in this game. But Alan Breed's going to need to be able to have a ball handling and take some load off David Duke, because David Duke's much better when he is off the ball. And yeah, if you guys want to find me on Twitter, DiBiasi Peter, that's my personal Twitter, and my podcast is Talking Sports Podcast. We also have a Twitter, a YouTube, and an Instagram, and we post on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. So if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, that would be awesome. And that's where you guys can listen to me: YouTube and Apple Podcasts, Talking Sports Podcast, and then on Instagram and Twitter, Talking Sports PD. So find me anywhere there, and that would be awesome.
Yeah, make sure you guys go follow him, check out his content. There's a lot of good stuff over there. The whole WDOM sports community has a lot of great content year in and year out. So make sure you stick with those guys. A lot of great people there. But yeah, this will do it for this one. Friars looking to try to get back to 500 on the season. Home game against UConn, 4 o'clock Wednesday on Fox Sports 1. Make sure you're following us on Twitter at the Flex Hoops so you can get our thoughts during the game and get our thoughts after when our post-game show comes out. That way you can get those notifications and be right on top of it. Listen to our show before anybody else does. I wish I could tell you there was a prize for that. We don't give out prizes, but if enough people listen, maybe we can afford some prizes to our early listeners. But thank you everybody for listening. And as always, Joe.
Go Friars. I really wish the game wasn't at 4. You just reminded me of that. I'm going to be at work, so after 4 p.m., nothing's getting done.
That'll do it with the early games and everybody working from home right now. I was about to say, that's 2020 for you. It still feels like 2020, and it's February.
What is
Oh
it,
my.
March 300 something? Matt, you
Yeah,
were counting.
it's like March 330th or something at this point. I don't know. We're all going crazy, but hopefully you enjoyed this show. Thank you for listening.
Go Friars.